Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're having a pleasant day wherever you may be. I find myself here on the banks of the Colorado River in between California and Arizona. I am going to be tackling this time the final stretch of the Mother Road. Yes, that's right, Route 66. And although it extends all the way from Chicago over 2,000 miles away, budgetary and time constraints forced me to do it in sections, and I hope this to be the first of many installments of one day finally getting the entire route done. But for now, I figured I'd start with the closest one to me and do the final stretch in California. So for now, I'm about to head west and go through some small little desert or former desert communities before ultimately hitting the urban sprawl of Los Angeles. Few routes have the lore and romanticism that Route 66 does, so hopefully this will encourage people to hit the road and try it themselves. And with that said, let's go! Route 66's journey in California once began here at the Old Trails Bridge, a sleek structure that spanned the Colorado River and last saw traffic some 70 years ago. But now it carries gas lines, so this is as close as you can get. The road now unceremoniously begins just outside the gate of the power company and hugs the river before forcing you onto I-40 for a bit, a common theme for the modern version of this route, before reaching Needles. Not only was this a major stop on Route 66, but it began as a railroad town, as evidenced by the El Garza's Hotel built by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. Just across the street is a small museum that showcases the local history, including the ties to the railroad, mining, the local Native Americans, and even the town's role as the port on the river. It's a modest effort, with very pleasant workers enthusiastically offering what they know, including boasting of their status as where Snoopy's brother Spike once lived. Just outside of town, you pass some crudely elaborate stone monuments that appear to honor veterans, before briefly rejoining I-40, and then ultimately splitting from it, veering off into the desert toward the town of Goffs while loosely following the railroad tracks. So here I am in Goffs, or what used to be Goffs. There's not much left. There's a bunch of abandoned buildings. There are a couple that have been restored, like the schoolhouse, and you can apparently take tours during the winter. The schoolhouse and other buildings do look like they're relatively well maintained, so who knows, maybe one of these winters I'll make a trip out here and actually take a tour of the grounds. But for now, they're pretty strict. They have cameras and things like that, so you can't go walking around. During World War II, there was military installation in this area, and that was a big part of Goffs. But once Route 66 was rerouted, that was pretty much the end of this town. That's a story that's pretty common amongst a lot of these towns. The route continues, eventually crossing to the south of I-40, passing through the now mostly abandoned town of Essex, as well as the deserted stop of Chambliss. So here at this random spot in the Mojave Desert just outside of Amboy are these concrete spots here. This used to be the spot of an old Route 66 rest stop back in the 1950s. Long gone, but they put the little kiosk here to sort of commemorate it. A little further down a straight stretch of road is the next town. Now I find myself here at Roy's, arguably one of Route 66's most famous landmarks and synonymous with the town with Amboy. Once a major stop along Route 66, Amboy featured a gas station, cafe, motel, and even a school. Like most towns on this stretch, it was reduced to obscurity with the opening of the interstate and is now just some abandoned buildings with the exception of the gas station. It is now probably best known simply as a great photo op out in the desert. Route 66 passes a couple of dormant volcanoes, the first being Amboy Crater just a couple miles from town. Last erupting around 10,000 years ago, the cinder cone may be reached by a 1.5-mile trail from the parking lot. Okay, so I finally made it. In the 100 plus, almost 110 degree heat, I made it into Amboy Crater. With a little more effort and being careful on the sharp rocks, climbing to the rim of the crater offers a nice view of the town of Amboy, as well as the lava field surrounding the volcano and the crater itself. As you're walking around Amboy Crater, keep an eye out for lava bombs. They are rocks that have sort of a football shape. As the lava was spewed out into the air,
hardened before it hit the ground, and it retained that. Now, I'm not even sure if this is one. Kind of has a similar shape, but kind of far removed from my geology classes, so it might not even be one, but they have a similar look to this. But if you do find one, take your pictures, enjoy the moment, but leave it, because leave no trace.
Continuing several miles from Amboy, you eventually encounter the much less conspicuous Pisgah crater, which has no signage with exception to the mining company that owns it, and is far less tourist friendly than its counterpart to the east.
Now I'm here at Pisgah Crater, which is known for its numerous lava tubes, just like the one behind me here. Lava tubes form when the lava flows, the outer edge cools, and the underneath continues to flow. Not unlike a pudding skin, I guess you could think of it. There are countless tubes as you walk around here. They range from small in size, like the one here, to much larger. Here I am inside one of the more easily accessible lava tubes. I've seen a few that are probably big enough to climb into, but it seemed a little more adventurous than I was going for. And I guess now I can add spelunking to my repertoire here. So, yeah. It's been fun exploring the lava fields outside the Pisgah crater. It's got a really unique landscape. The way some of the lava, it looks like it kind of folded on over itself. It's really cool looking. However, it used to be a little bit taller. Wish it was a baller. But it was mined, and which means that it's partially owned by private interests. It's not marked, it's not very tourist friendly, there's no trail to speak of, but there is a questionable legal aspect to it. I'm not sure if where I parked is private property or if it's BLM land, I'm not positive. But if you've got a little bit of time to spare and a little adventurous spirit, I would say, yeah, come on, stop by the Pisgah crater. One thing I've noticed is that when Route 66 is out on its own in the middle of nowhere, the road is actually pretty decent. However, when you start to parallel I-40, they know nobody's going to be on this road, so they really let it go. Even has a sign that warns you, rough road for the next 10 miles. None more evident than right here. It's not just the shield that's deteriorated, but look at the quality of the road. There's pits, there's grooves, there's all sorts of stuff. Makes for a really rough ride on stretches like this. Dotted all along Route 66 are abandoned buildings, abandoned signs to buildings that used to be there, all sort of remnants of a bygone era. It's sort of weird, it's sort of nostalgic and, interesting, but yet at the same time a little depressing, It'll never be the way it was. I guess all we can do is just sort of enjoy what's left of it as it slowly deteriorates.
While most businesses were lost to time, some persevered, like the Baghdad Cafe in Newberry Springs. Formerly known as the Sidewinder Cafe, it changed to its current name following the success of a 1987 German film that was filmed at this location. The walls are cluttered with various memorabilia from its countless visitors, many coming from Europe because of the film. But to Californians, the cafe gained notoriety after a visit from the beloved Huell Hauser, known for his show broadcast on PBS. Continuing west, Route 66 continues to play leapfrog with I-40 as it has for the last 50 miles or so, before passing through the town of Daggett and ultimately being forced back onto the interstate to bypass a Marine Corps station. It is here that you reach the footprint of the largest city on the route since Needles, the town of Barstow, and up to this point, a rare opportunity of seeing the inhabited buildings outnumber the uninhabited. Venturing about 1 mile off the route will bring you here.
So this is one of the famous Harvey houses built for the Santa Fe Railroad. This is the Casa del Desierto in Barstow, California. Harvey houses were restaurant hotels back in the day when you had to get off the train to eat and things like that. These were more or less the gold standard for accommodations on the railroad, and they were a huge hit. Even spawned a movie starring Judy Garland back in the 40s. They've existed in various states of disrepair. There's a lot of movement to get many of them restored. Looks like this one's been pretty well restored. Now it serves as the Amtrak station in Barstow, even though it's an unstaffed station. This is Casa del Desierto, the second Harvey house on the route, the other one being in Needles.
Aside from being the train station, it's also home to the Mother Road Museum. Once inside, there's plenty to look at, most of which is dedicated to Route 66 in general, with some emphasis on the nearby desert communities that we've already been through thus far. Those items not related to the Mother Road directly still offer a nice glimpse into the life and history of the mid-20th century. Just next door is also a railroad museum. There you'll find a handful of rail-related artifacts, many of which are from local railroads. Though much of this relates to more technical aspects, so even I wasn't able to fully appreciate it. Out in the parking lot, there was also a handful of various locomotives and rail cars on display. From there, it's back on Main Street with its Route 66 themed businesses, and before you know it, you hit the outskirts of town and you're back on the open road.
So I'm here at the Bottle Tree Ranch. I really don't see any explanation for this place, so somebody just decided to put a bunch of bottles and old things up on sticks. It's one of those roadside attractions that's either kitschy and cool, or the last thing you see as you're lured into the serial killer's trap kind of thing. Nevertheless, it's one of those quirky little Route 66 roadside attractions.
Continuing west, you reach the small outpost of Oro Grande. It's mainly just a small cluster of shops and a pizza parlor, and even though pizza sounded pretty good, I continued on my way. The road continues over the Rockfield Bridge, built in 1930 for Route 66, and indicates that we are entering the next town of Victorville. There you'll find a historic downtown as well as the museum dedicated to Route 66. Unfortunately, by the time I arrived, it was closed for the day, so I'll have to try again some other time. Heading to Cajon, 66 joins I-15, though I stuck to Mariposa Road to avoid the traffic and maintain the spirit.
Atop Cajon, there used to be a cafe called the Summit Inn. Legend has it that Elvis Presley kicked the jukebox when he did not see any of his songs in the jukebox, something that was rectified soon after. It was a Route 66 icon, got lost in the recent Blue Cut fire, which I'm about to see the effects of as I drive through Cajon. So, yep. R.I.P. Summit Inn. Never got a chance to go.
Next, Route 66 continues through Cajon Pass, which is a narrow passage between two mountain ranges caused by the San Andreas Fault. Now, for most people, this region, they're just used to riding Interstate 15 because it's more or less just taken over in this area. But you can still drive on a good chunk because it lives on as Cajon Boulevard. Now, unfortunately, it's somewhat of a shadow of its former self in this area because it used to have 2 lanes of traffic in the north and two lanes in the southbound. But they've pretty much just shut down half of it now because, you know, what for? So half of it's sort of abandoned. You can kind of drive on it, walk along it, and just kind of appreciate some Cajon Pass history. And also, as an aside, Cajon Pass is also known as a good rail fan spot, so keep that in mind.
While this was not always the case, nowadays Cajon Pass more or less represents when Route 66 reaches the outskirts of Los Angeles, where the city of San Bernardino greets you.
Now, in San Bernardino, a cool place to check out is the site of the original McDonald's. Now, it's not the original building that was torn down a long time ago, but they did make an unofficial McDonald's museum here. Now, I'm not going to lie, I figured I was just going to spend like 10-15 minutes in there, take a look around, and be underwhelmed and leave, but no, it's actually really cool in there. There's a lot on the history of McDonald's and how they became a franchise, things like that. Very reminiscent of the movie The Founder. And there's also a ton of like Happy Meal toys and promotional things. It's really cool. Like, it's like a wave of nostalgia as you're walking through there. It's like, whoa. But yeah, it's really cool, and the price is right. It's free. So if you're in the area, stop on by, take a look.
Not far from San Bernardino in nearby Rialto is the Wigwam Motel. Despite the name, the 19 individual rooms were modeled in the style of a Native American teepee. Built in 1949, these were the 7th and last such motels built in various locales around the country. Currently, only 3 of them remain, and this is one of 2 that live on along historic Route 66. Around this point, Route 66 begins to lose its charm, and despite the local attempts, it gets lost to suburbia.
I'm not too young for anything anymore. I see all my friends and neighbors at the liquor store. I'm mechanically inclined, I'm blissfully insane, I'm rescuing laws of the mundane. I'm living the dream now. I can sleep through anything. Hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now. Look at me, I'm Captain Suburbia. I'm blowing out the birthday candles in utopia. I'm a bird, I'm a plane, I'm Captain Suburbia.
As Route 66 approaches the Pasadena area, you'll notice an interesting, seemingly random stripe down the middle of the street. Now, I assure you, it's not random. That's actually there for the float operators for the iconic Rose Parade. They can't see forward, they have to look down. Speaking of the Rose Parade, Pasadena is also home to the iconic Rose Bowl Stadium, where they host the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl game. It's also here in Pasadena that you start facing alignment issues with Route 66. All across the route over the years, it's shifted, it's moved, and things like that, and it's really up to you just to follow which one you want to do. But up until this point in California, it's been pretty straightforward. It's not until you get to Pasadena that you really start to hit a web of different options. And one of your options is the Colorado Boulevard Bridge. It's this beautiful arch bridge that spans the Arroyo Seco. It's really a gorgeous bridge. But unfortunately, it has been known to attract suicide jumpers. So they've had to install these fences along the edge, which kind of takes a little bit from the aesthetic, but hey, it keeps people safe, so I guess you really can't complain. So leaving the Pasadena area, I decided to take the Arroyo Seco Parkway, which was one of the very first freeways ever built. It was built back in the 40s, and it's pretty obvious because it's got some windiness to it. On-ramps and off-ramps are super short, so it was definitely built for a different era of driving. But that's how I'm going to get into the downtown LA area. Driving through downtown will lead us here to 7th and Broadway, the end of Route 66. Bet you thought it ended at the beach, right? Well, it does. But from 1926 to 1939, this is the heart of a bustling theater district, and this was the end of Route 66. Unfortunately, the once grand theaters that lined this street are now pretty much just knockoff electronics and shoe store vendors and things like that. But yeah, let's keep on going to the real end. From downtown LA, Route 66 travels along Sunset Boulevard before turning onto Santa Monica Boulevard. Prior to the Pasadena area, various businesses and strip malls incorporated 66 into their names, reminding you of the road you traveled. By the time you reach the west side of LA, that practice is all but forgotten. Now, your only reminders are the various historic Route 66 signs that dot the side of the road as you pass through cities like Hollywood and Beverly Hills on your way to the end of the route. Well, that brings us here to Santa Monica Pier. This is the end of the road, right? Well, not exactly. Yes, there is yet another end to Route 66, except this one's kind of a big one. Let me explain. So that brings us to this seemingly random intersection in Santa Monica. It's actually here at Olympic and Lincoln where Route 66 officially comes to an end. Now, the pier is sort of the ceremonial, colloquial, oh yeah, that's where it ends. This is actually the official ending, or the beginning, depending on your perspective. People don't drive 2,500 miles to end up half a mile from the beach. For all intents and purposes, this is the unofficial, official end to Route 66, Santa Monica Pier. It was built in 1909, and I just learned it was built to extend sewage pipes out into the sea. Who'd have thought, right? But over the years, its use has changed, obviously, to a tourist destination. Now it's got a lot of restaurants, it's got a little amusement park, and there's a lot of little street performers here, too, doing their thing. It's a major attraction here in Santa Monica. You get people from all over the world enjoying it, enjoying the beautiful sunshine that Southern California has to offer. And yeah, great place to visit, a great way to end your journey on Route 66, or begin it. Well, that does it for this one. Thanks for joining me on this little journey all the way across the country on Route 66. Just play along. But in all seriousness, thanks for joining me on this leg across California. Hope you enjoyed checking out all the different stops and things along the way, crossing the desert, looking at the geology, the little towns, the abandoned buildings, and then finally once we got to the LA area and all of its sprawl, which kind of glossed over because, it's not as adventurous. But thanks for joining me. I hope you had a good time, and I guess I'll see you on the next one.
another unofficial end to Route 66. This Will Rogers plaque here at Santa Monica and Ocean.